All right, guys, thanks for joining us for this week's Fireside Chat. Let me get the screen kicked over. As you can see, it's starting to load up behind me live. If you guys are on, leave us some comments so that we know it's coming through. And as always, feel free to leave comments or questions or any input you guys have. Thanks for joining us for this week's. That happened last time. But leave any questions, comments, input you have on the topic. I try to keep up with looking at it back here behind me, and hopefully be able to involve you guys that way. That's why we have these fireside chats live, so that we can interact with you all, and then we rip the audio and put it on a podcast later. But let me go ahead and bring in, we've got Jake on tonight. Let's see if that works. How you doing, Jake?
Oh, all is good here in Kansas. A little windy.
Yeah, and you said you took the weekend off from hunting?
Yeah, the forecast, it was just really hot and windy, 80s and 90s. I'll wait till next weekend. Kind of had some things to do family-wise this weekend, so we just hung out at home. So try to get out next weekend when that temperature is supposed to drop down.
What's it going to be like next weekend in Kansas?
Oh, I think next weekend, well, as far as now, weather changes like crazy here. But as far as I know, 70s, you're getting that a little bit cooler, especially in the morning hunts. You got a frost advisory for the morning, so tomorrow morning would be good, but of course, it's Monday, back to work. So hopefully the weather continues to hold low through the weekend. But
yeah, I was thinking here in this area in Nebraska looked the same for next weekend, like 50s maybe, high 30s overnight, so
yep,
might play well.
Yeah, but hopefully, a lot of the grain, corn will be clipped off out here. They're doing that pretty heavy right now. Harvest is going on. I drove around a lot of my hunting properties, and a lot of the corn nearby is getting picked off, and should help, force them bucks down the creek bottoms instead of being up top and hiding in the corn and milo or whatever. But
yeah, I was just talking to a guy yesterday, older gentleman, and he was telling me about how they used to hunt the standing corn, and it was kind of like pheasant hunting.
You just find them in the
Yeah, they would line up 20 yards apart from each other, and they would go row by row.
Yep.
And they could all see each other, and they would stay in the same row, but they would just look from one to another in that row, and then one row at a time when the wind was just really howling, and they could get around in the corn real easy. And he said they used to be able to pick off 2-3 deer easily doing that.
Yeah, I've had a few buddies say they killed deer that way bow hunting. You just look down each row, kind of get below the stalks and the ears, and just see them bedded down in there. And I've never tried it. I'm sure it would work.
Yeah.
Especially on a doe or something.
Do any of the properties that you hunt actually have standing crop on the property?
No, the adjacent property. Unlike last year, the property that I hunted was surrounded by corn. Adjacent property across the creek bottom has corn this year. As my last hunt, I had some film, which we haven't put out yet, but I was probably 60, 70 yards off facing that other property. And I seen there's tons of deer that corn. You can just see the stalks shaking. You can hear them eating. I turned the audio all the way up on my camera, but of course nothing ever came over to the property that I was on, so I kind of was just filming deer for fun, kind of.
Yeah. That's the good part about the new cameras, is being able to film deer from a ways away.
Yeah, the audio's insane.
Yeah. None of the properties I'm on either, they butt up against crop. But that one piece that I had been hunting quite a bit, it actually had a section of beans on the property. but obviously that doesn't apply to what we're talking about as far as like trying to stalk a whitetail bedded down.
Yeah.
But it was kind of
Yeah,
nice for the first time to be able to actually hunt over crop.
Yeah. There's numerous walk-in hunting properties with corn, of course, but it's up top, and it'd probably be few and far between compared to if corn is on the creek bottom. You might have a little more higher success rate with that.
Yeah.
Just out in the middle of nowhere, it'd probably be tough to.
We're not going to walk a mile just to bed.
Yeah, just be a goose chase, I think.
Yeah, so you've been out once, right? You've been out once. Yep. And your season opens mid-September in Kansas.
September 14th.
I've been out about, I'd say 5 sits, I believe. And we opened September 1. I think Ben isn't on right now, guys. He is in Arkansas. If you have seen on some of our social media posting, and watch for it coming up later. He's been in Arkansas with Veterans Creed Outdoors, and the main guys there at Veterans Creed Outdoors, they're hosting a gentleman named Dennis for a hunt this week in deer hunting. Maybe you saw Dennis's live post on Facebook several weeks ago. He was being harassed when he was bow hunting. This is his first year bow hunting, I believe. And he was being harassed for his race, basically, while he was sitting in a tree stand by somebody out on the road, blaring music, and just pretty awful. And he is a firefighter, I believe, in Florida. I know he's a first responder of some sort. And so Veterans Creed Outdoors works with veterans and obviously first responders, and they jumped on the opportunity to make sure that guy wants to stick in the tradition despite that bad experience. So they brought him up there, and it's been really cool to watch the lives from the weekend. And Ben is there, and he's actually filming, and we'll be producing the video for Dennis through Middle American Outdoors. And there's been a lot of cool experiences. I know that they are out right now. They were thinking about trying to join us on the live fireside chat here, but they are out right now tracking a doe that I believe Dennis had shot this evening, and that's what they're doing. But I think as far as in Iowa, before Ben headed to Arkansas, he had hunted maybe 2-3 times prior to heading out, and they started October 1st, so a couple weeks behind Jake even. And Ben there's a video coming out soon. I mean, there's gonna be a video coming out tomorrow. Ben took his young daughter Carly, who I believe is 6 or 7, and it was her first time sitting in the tree stand, and so that video will be coming out tomorrow as far as our weekly hunting content. And it's a short hunt, I'll just say that, but it's really cool to see how she enjoyed it. Looking at the comments here, Dwayne, good to see you, Dwayne. You guys maybe heard or saw Dwayne last week on the fireside chat here. He made the comment that Dennis did get one yesterday too, and he did. It's been a heck of a 3 days for him. That's all I'll say. He basically missed one at 20-some yards the first morning, and Ben said he felt like he was about 4 inches tall after that. They, picked him back up, got his bow tuned up, realized there was a little something wrong with the bow. Last night, smoked a doe 42 yards through the heart. And then I don't know the details on tonight's, but it sounds like maybe shot another doe, and I don't know, that's a tough track job, but they went and got the tracking dog just to get the tracking dog some work, so hopefully we'll be able to show some of that on the recap for him as well. But anyway, I was asking about how many times we've hunted because it kind of leans into the topic we have for tonight. I'm looking here, I'm trying to keep up with these two. Hoyt Griffin, I see you on the comments here on YouTube. Let me text and ask them what part of Arkansas they're in. I'm not 100% for sure. It's at some camp that Veterans Creed Outdoors had access to, or owns or something along those lines. So I'll try to find out that part for sure, and chime it in later. But I was asking, how often Jake's been out, how often I've been out, etc., because it really leads into the topic for tonight. And the topic for tonight was October-Lull. And you guys maybe call it something different where you're at. This is, I think, Jake's probably common with. It's a common term, I would say, in the Midwest, is people call it the October-Lull. If you asked our good friend Jamie up in Canada, in Alberta, he says it doesn't exist where they live. So, and it might not. What we talk about tonight might help you to understand why it doesn't exist in certain places, and what you can do differently to keep it away. I guess to open it, Jake, what are your first thoughts on what the October-Lull means to you, or what you've known it to mean as you're grown up as a hunter?
As far as the October-Lull, the statement being that bucks are kind of nocturnal, not a whole lot of movement in the daylight. You're sitting in the stands for hours and you're not seeing anything or something along those lines. Everything's showing up at night on your cameras. Yeah, that I would say, it's somewhat true, especially, in October. It starts off hot in September, your first week or so, you see quite a bit of deer. And then maybe the pressure puts them, more nocturnal, whether it be if you're hunting in high pressure areas, or maybe it be that they're still standing corn, which is my instance. A lot of the grains are still out. So the deer are kind of a lot harder to see, so they don't come out into the trees, or they don't come through the trees by your stands, or whatever. But I'd say the October-Lull is when you asked me that earlier, I've had just as good luck during October as I have, November. It's just, you got to be in the right places, and you got to know those places. You got to find, water or the cut cornfield, so you can see across the fields. And even seeing a deer at 500 yards, makes things a lot better than seeing. But the October-Lull, for me, I keep the same tactics as I normally do early season. Just kind of stay mobile and find some water because it's hot. But
yeah, I've in preparation for this, I have my own experiences and feelings on it. But in preparation for this, I listened to a lot and read.
Audio's messed up, Matt.
Is it better?
There you go.
So, I don't know if that came across on the others or just for Jake, but I'll just chime in real quick before I answer. Hoyt on YouTube, they are near Cabot, Arkansas, is where they're hunting. And everybody else, thanks for chiming in. Go ahead and leave comments. Let us know what you think of the topics, and I'll try to keep reading it. Looking at Dwayne over here, he said, been out several times. It's been warm and does only, just a few bucks right at dusk, which is, I would say, pretty common.
Yeah.
About this time. So anyway, I have my few years of experience and opinion on it. I say just like I've been hunting for 8 years or so now, and I say just a few years because it's different over here, chasing whitetail in ag culture versus I started hunting in western Nebraska where we were spotting stalking mule deer, and it really don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
There's not corn around there to compete with. The main crop out there is beets, so they're not hiding in there, and they're in the canyons and stuff, and they're gonna be in the canyons, and it can stay really hot out there. So yeah, you get close to the water, and it really doesn't matter what time of year. And the public properties are just so expansive that it's easy to avoid some of the pressure. And we're kind of hinting at different topics we're going to touch on throughout this conversation, and we'll just kind of repeat them over and over so they stick a little. But the term October-Lull, a lot of people, they say, I was listening to Whitetail Habitat Solutions. I really like listening to those guys, and they were talking about how it's a myth. It's not a mystical time of year, right? So like the rut is going to happen. It's biological. The does are going to go into heat at some point. What triggers it and when it's going to get triggered varies, but it's going to happen. They're going to go into heat. The bucks are going to get turned on. There's going to be a rut. The lull isn't part of some biological cycle, right? It doesn't have to exist. It's a product of hunting pressure, per se, is one of the components. It's really, if we broke it down, and we'll kind of break it down a little bit as far as what creates it and how to avoid it. And it's going to come down to three big topics, which Jake kind of already hit on too. Is going to be their feeding source, their bedding, security, and the hunting pressure. So when you're catching them at the beginning of your season, whether it's September 1st here or September 15th for Jake, they've been kind of lulled into this sense of false security where they can be out of the crop, be out of the corn during the day. They can be in a little more open areas. They can be out eating off of the, moist green beans earlier in the day because they don't have to worry about, they're not thinking about being hunted at that moment. But as soon as hunting pressure comes, they start smelling your scent around the woods because now you're deciding to get out and check all these cameras, or now you're out putting in tree stands or whatever you're doing, or you're just getting out and hunting. You're starting to put that pressure on. Suddenly they remember that, okay, it's time to put our guard up again. And so then here comes the onset of that October-Lull. It's not some biological deal. It is, we create it, right? Looking at Ben's commenting here, it says doing some training down here in Arkansas with David's blackmouth cur from Veterans Creed Outdoors right now. He might jump on in a couple minutes to join us, so we'll see. But like I said, they're tracking Dennis's deer tonight, getting that dog some work, so that'd be cool to watch. I've never had to track or gotten to track with the dog, so it'd be cool to have that in the video as well. So Jake, as far as those three big things, what do you think is most important if you're trying to avoid that so-called October-Lull?
Well, for me, it's definitely staying mobile. That's a broad term, but staying mobile, finding that water source, especially in October heat here in Kansas, where it's been 90. Hunting conditions is not favorable, but if you find that water, maybe find that cut corn, some of those thicker areas, you're bound to have success. And that's really what helps me out, is I try to always find the water, even if it's hot. When it's hot, I always try to hunt over water. I mean, at least within 100 yards in between the bedding and the water or something. And then corn, there's two different tactics. You could find a cut cornfield. Like I said, you definitely see some deer coming out there, eating on that corn that's on the ground. Or two, finding one of the only pieces of property on the creek bottom with standing corn, because that provides security for them deer. There's two different tactics there. I use both of them. Right now, the piece that I have on the bottom, the corn across the creek, across the property, is still there, and it's one of the only properties with corn still there. I would say because it's maybe he just hasn't gotten down there to pick it, or it's too wet yet. But that would be my two, my tip for sure. Finding that corn and water. That's how I do it out here in Kansas. If I'm not trying to stalk a mule deer, or something like that, which October-Lull.
What's up, dude?
Hey, buddy.
I just hung up on Jake, I'm pretty sure. Everybody, stay with us. Whoops. So, what are you guys doing?
We'll figure it out.
Well, you're on the camera. You're on the live. What are you guys up to, Ben?
Well, I'm down here in Arkansas with Veterans Creed Outdoors. We had a gentleman named Dennis that had a real poor experience hunting. He was a fairly new adult hunter, just getting into the sport. And so Veterans Creed, like we've said before, we serve veterans and first responders. Sorry, I'm trying not to shine my headlamp in y'all's right in the screen here. But we serve veterans and first responders. I had to go after this deer that Travis Rempe shot, or not Rempe, Travis shot. He's the vice president of Veterans Creed out, and he shot a nice little doe tonight. And
nice. And is it a tough blood trail, or is the dog just getting some work?
He's just getting some work. We're just kind of letting him figure it out and learn on his own, and so far he's doing a pretty good job. In Iowa, they just made it illegal to blood trail with dogs in Iowa. So this right here, so I can see how the other side does. I'm glad to see Iowa finally come aboard on that. They're one of the very few states that are finally getting to where you can blood trail, which I think personally, I think it was foolish not to do it, but. Yeah, this is real exciting for us. It's kind of neat to actually see it firsthand for once, see how it works. I'm kind of getting some training too. But David back here in the trees, he's hot on the tail with them, and he's kind of, like I said, he's only, I think this would have been his fourth deer shot, and so a lot of this is real new to him, and it's kind of neat to see somebody else see this all for the first time. Hey, Dennis, come here a second, buddy. I'll introduce y'all to Dennis real quick. This Dennis here, I don't know if y'all can see him. It's kind of dark.
Yeah, I'm a little dark.
What's up?
Well, he's a little dark too.
Congrats, man.
But yeah, we're hot after this doe here that Travis shot, so I'm gonna hop off here for tonight and let you guys get back to what you was talking about.
Cool. Enjoy. Congrats, Dennis.
Yep.
Dan, Travis.
Congrats,
All right, we'll see you guys.
See ya. So, Jake, you were talking about where you try to set up between water and corn.
Yeah.
So, it kind of that covers one, I would say, topic. Like we were saying, with the with you guys that are listening, let us know that the audio is better now. I don't know what happened there. Obviously, I hung up on Jake because I still can't figure out how to smoothly add a Skype call without screwing it up each time. But I cut Jake off. That's why we lost him. And then we brought Ben in, and we got it put back together. And Jake, you did something funny with your camera view, man. You got it on like portrait mode. It's all good. You'll see later. I mean, you come out good. It's like all the background is blurred out and you're just like sharp. It's awesome.
I think my camera qualities, I don't know, it might be a little blurry. Let me.
It looks awesome. So
I noticed that on my phone too. I can see that. It's all blurry.
As far as the October-Lull, you can call it, white trail transition is one of the words that the whitetail habitat solution guys use, because that's what it really is. It's a transition between the summer phase where they could do whatever they wanted and tease you and be on all your cameras and be out during the daylight and you could drive down the road and see them on the beans, to transitioning to now we know you're in the woods, it's time to hide again. And that's what's going on. So there was 3 big time components that play into when this happens. They start looking for good fall food source, so their food source transitions. For instance, the beans, just with the beans, like I was hunting over this September, there was one spot I really thought I could get in and get on them, getting on the beans when they were green. I just could never get into that spot because the wind was never right. And then a couple 3 weeks later, the wind was still never right when I had a chance, and then the greens were brown. They went from green to yellow to brown in about 2 days. And so once it's brown, they're not coming in again until they're cut. And so then last weekend, you guys will see the video, I finally got into that spot because the wind was right, and I saw on one of my cell cameras that they had cut the beans the day before. So here's a good fall food source for them again, of getting in there and eating after it's been cut. Unfortunately, as I was walking in, I could see a half mile to the south, further down, on the other side of this adjacent private piece, and somebody had cut the corn. So I was pretty sure that I was gonna come up short there. I'm pretty certain that they would prefer to go eat off of cut corn than cut dry beans. So yep, I got in there still just because I was there, and I saw nothing more than I believe I saw a yearling came in and bedded right by me, and I saw his mom later in the night looking for him, but I'm pretty sure she probably came from the corn just to try to find him. And I'm pretty sure everybody else went to the corn, the cut corn. So the fall food sources, you know, Jake, what in your mind is some good fall food sources to be targeting?
Targeting my area, you have 2 food sources here, grain wise. Unless you get farther east, but in my area, you got milo and corn. Both can be, pretty beneficial. Milo, you can actually see them bedded down, and if you look close enough. But corn, like I said, has always been the number one for me. And once that corn's gone, if you can't find the water, if you hunt over that winter wheat, it holds that moisture in the greens, and that's another good place to find a deer's. A little cove of winter wheat, or a little back point, finger of some wheat, which on my property that I hunt actually have that, and I can see the deer, through the trees out on that little piece of winter wheat. My last hunt, and I tried to get some footage of that too, but that corn and that winter wheat for me is definitely number 2, priority.
Yeah, I think, again, Whitetail Habitat Solution, they talk a lot about brassica. They put a lot of brassica in their food plots. I don't have any food plots right now. I don't have any property where I could do food plots or do anything like that. Hopefully in the near future, we'll be experimenting with some food plots. Ben is real big into food plots. He's got them in his yard, like literally in the yard, 10 yards from his house. Just where he lives, it just works. And I think he's got some winter wheat in there and some clover that was coming up real good. And those guys talk a lot about too, just because you have the food source. Let's say you plant a brassica, you plant a food plot with some brassica in there and some really rich moisture greens. Just because you have that doesn't mean the buck's gonna walk out there in October with his, not paying any attention just because he wants that food plot. If you've been in there at all and they have any reason to think you've been in there and now pressure's applied, they're not going in there, right? If you haven't been in there at all and they feel they have no reason to think that you're in there, they might actually be out there during the daytime, and you might get trail cameras of them on them plots during the daytime. Which brings us then to I guess we'll jump into, that'll be the second point, will be pressure. Pressure is a huge part, and it really varies depending on what you're hunting, right? Depends on walk-in, public, leased club ground, private ground, whatever it is. Pressure is going to play a big role. As soon as the deer know you're in there, or anybody's in there, pressure's on, right? They switch over. It's not, oh, there's a ton of hunters in here. There's been 1 or 2 in here. That's enough to say, hey, the hunters are here. And they're going to go into full-on hunting season mode. For you, Jake, what are some things that you would try to do to try to either avoid pressured area right now, or to avoid putting pressure on areas that you want to hunt later on?
Well, I would, I like right now I'm hunting some private pieces just because I'm trying to limit the people that's in there. Luckily in my area, not a whole lot of people bow hunt. A lot of, I mean, local people don't, necessarily bow hunt. We get some out of state or something that walk in hunting, but there's so much walk in hunting out in this area that it can go walk in hunting, lease, ground, private, walk in, lease. There's quite a bit leased up too, but they're only, some of them lease guys only come in once, every so often. So those properties, if you can hunt beside them or something like that, the pressure isn't so bad. I try, and like you said, I try to play the wind walking in. I mean, you try to get any sort of advantage you can. I'll cut across the field if the wind's straight in my face. Just a wide open field instead of skirting down the tree edge, a trail that they might walk in. Just to try to eliminate some of that pressure. I did that in my hunt before, and it seemed to work pretty well. I knew exactly, it turned out exactly the way I figured it would. I got up in a tree, my camera arm wouldn't fit in the tree, so I moved tree stands. It was a cluster. Yeah, you'll see it on video. But I played the wind walking in, and even with that cluster, that especially probably being the only first one in there, being early season and being private ground, that really helps. So I try to find, if you can get permission, even the littlest pieces can help if it's in the mix of, in the mix of a creek bottom or something. If you can ask a farmer for permission and to get some access to private, it's going to help in the long run compared to them heavily pressured public grounds or whatever, especially what you face, Matt. The public, there's quite a vast, of public, but walking out here, there's tons of walk-in and opportunities for people, So I would say the pressure isn't like centralized on an area or something. So that's where I have the good favor out here.
Yes, I think earlier I kind of hinted at in western Nebraska is a little bit different as far as whether there was a October-Lull or not. And part of that was, one, the food sources don't really change necessarily. Mule deer are eating sticks and twigs and dry leaves anywhere. So they don't ever have prime opportunity at something really. The other part, the biggest part, is the pressure. So here on this side of Nebraska, public pieces might be 80 or 160 acres and few and far between. And then you go out to western Nebraska in the Panhandle and Muley Country, and there are hundreds of thousands of acres of public land. I mean, you could hike for a couple miles before even getting to the backside of it. Or there's some places out there that are just so cool. I've shared with a couple guys that were curious. You could hike for, I think it's like 13 miles almost from the tip of one to the end of the other, just conjoining public pieces. The reason I say this is that pressure doesn't have to be a factor in that area. If you're willing to work hard enough, you can outwork pressure in an area like that. You can hike in 2 or 3 miles. You can talk to neighboring farmers and get access from their property to the backside. Because in Nebraska, like in these public properties, there's going to be 1, maybe 2 parking places, and you have to park in those parking lots. You can't park on the side of the road, go down the ditch and over the fence. They will give you a ticket, because in doing that, you're usually crossing over a chunk of private land, and you just can't do that. You have to park in the parking lots. So if there's only 1 or 2 and there's a few thousand acres of property, you're gonna have to walk unless you get access from the backside by getting permission or something like that. But you can outwork pressure out there. It's really hard here. The beauty of bow hunting is not a lot of people actually want to do it. If you're listening in Michigan and Pennsylvania, I'm sorry. I think it's a whole different world where you guys are. I think I saw that Michigan at one time had like 400,000 bow hunters, which is insane. Just insane. But I can't even imagine what pressure would be like then on those heavy timbered public areas. But here, being a bow hunter, you can actually maybe get ahead of it. One of the people I was listening to in preparation of this, I don't know exactly how to say his name. It's Michael Waddell, I believe, right? With Bone Collector. And he was talking about, he said, I love when people see October-Lull because all it's going to do is lull hunters to sleep. So throughout this, I don't want you guys to think that we're telling you don't hunt this period. Realize that other hunters are thinking, well, I'm not even going to hunt in October. And Michael would actually say that his preferred time to hunt is this October lull period because everybody else is out of the woods. It's just different. Bucks do still go nocturnal. Deer do still go nocturnal in this period because you forced them to. There are a few things that you could watch for to capitalize on in that period. I don't know, is there anything specifically that would trigger you right now, knowing that deer are 95% nocturnal? You can hear me. We got no sound. What the? I don't even know where we're at, where we lost sound, but that's great.
That's weird.
Yeah, so I'll just back it up just a little bit then. Jake, let's go to what were you saying about, this time of year, the bucks have gone, 95%, all the deer have gone 95% nocturnal because of the pressure. Yeah. It's still fairly warm enough to be up all night long. So what is something that would get you out in the woods, even though you know that the deer are starting to make that transition?
Well, number one, probably if I see my properties getting corn picked, I always like to sit next to that corn that's being picked. You never know what's going to run out of there or any sort of food source. And then two, like I was talking about, will be the cold fronts moving in or a temperature change after a storm, after the winds drop down, like tomorrow, like I said, if that cool front and that freeze coming in. I mean, if I was, if I could be a lucky guy, that'd be what I'm saying. That first freeze for sure. I don't normally hunt in October. It's usually later October. For those reasons, I kind of just fast forward and wait until like right around pre-rut or so, just because I have that ability to, I would say. And I never really have hunted the October like early, but I'm in the woods this year trying to get used to the filming before that buck comes in, real fast. And you're scrambling to get around. But back to the point, you just wait for that cold front to come through and definitely get the deer a little bit more on their feet, maybe a little earlier, even an hour earlier, 15 minutes earlier could help. You never know.
Yeah, that's yeah, sorry guys, we lost audio. I don't exactly know. Hopefully it wasn't for long. We didn't miss too much what we were saying, but Jake did repeat what he was saying there. And I had just been saying that I agree absolutely with Jake. It's all about the weather. At this point, they know that you're out. They know that hunters are out. They're going to try to be as nocturnal and avoid that hunting times as possible while they still can and they still have their wits about them. But if you can find that big weather snap, that big cold front that comes through, that big change in barometric pressure, if you have an app, one of the hunting apps that shows you those kind of projections of, some of those apps calculate moon phases. I happen to really like to watch moon phases. I don't think Jake watches moon phases much. I kind of into it. I mean, there's something that drives when feed and, when fish feed and when other animals feed. And the belief in the moon phases is that it has to do with when the moon's in the sun or directly overhead, directly underfoot, etc. And you can get lunar calendars and see. The buck that I did kill was watching moon phases, and the moon phase was really good. And it was during the October-Lull. It was October 10th. And the big thing was the moon phase was right. It was a new moon. It was actually like 3% waning. The moon overhead or underfoot time correlated with morning feeding time, like dead on. So it's likely, and it, as far as your sunrise and when you calculate morning feeding time, right? And then to add to that, for 2 or 3 days prior, it had been raining in this area, and I saw that the rain was going to snap. I was like, I got to do it. So I got in the kayak at 3 in the morning or 3:30 in the morning and kayaked a mile downriver back into the back of this public piece. And at 7:45, 8 o'clock in the morning, I killed that buck because they were up. The rain had stopped over, as I was kayaking down the river, basically the rain was stopping. But those are kind of the, I would even say, easier days. We didn't have to worry about camera gear and anything else. Like, it was just a kayak, me, and a bow, and maybe 2 things in my backpack, and just go get it. Which, if push comes to shove, I'm not gonna lie, I'll leave the camera behind and I'll go for it this year, because just not far enough into the actual hunting career to be worrying about the filming more than the hunting.
Yeah.
But cut off the ramble there. The point was that even though the deer are going nocturnal, if you're watching for, new moon or full moons, just, I don't like it unless it's super cold. There's a full moon coming on Halloween, which is kind of most people would say the kickoff for the rut. And I'm sure I'll be out that weekend. It's just really difficult. If it's semi-warm, if it's 40s overnight and it's full moon, they're probably just going to be out overnight, unless the rut really is hit and they've completely lost their wits already. It's kind of dicey. But this next weekend you got a new moon coming, so you got a pitch black night. It looks like it's going to be a little bit more cold. Probably a lot better chance that bucks are going to be up on their feet longer into the morning, staying warm before going to bed down. So I'll probably be out, even though it's the quote-unquote October-Lull. If I'm able to get out, I guess we'll see. But that was kind of the point there, is you can still hunt here. You're watching the weather patterning more than anything. And like Jake said, and you're watching the local crops. You're watching crops go down. So part of the crops going down then leads us to the third and final point, which is basically, I kind of made fun of Jake on his trail camera video earlier in the year when he hit on the things that deer really like: food, water, shelter, right? So, we've kind of covered the food and the water in the first one. We started in on the shelter as far as the pressure part, but the other part of shelter is their bedding. So recognizing that their bedding is changing, right? So what are some of the common places or common looks you go for bedding, Jake, as far as like their terrain or their geography there?
Yeah. As far as I see, of course they bed down the creeks time to time, but you're looking for them cutouts. For me, it's some drainage ditches in between fields with the thick grass or thickets. If you're on the creek bottom or irrigation channels, if you have irrigated ground, I would say. But the piece that I'm hunting right now is a long finger that has thickets, small trees, pretty thick. I find a lot of sheds in there, but pretty thick. And it leads down into the field, into the water, into your cornfield. And up top, if I'm stalking mule deer or even whitetail up in the hills, you're looking for them thicker cutouts that's kind of out of that wind. Since the corn's not up there, they're not going to be bedded down, out in the middle of the field too often. So you try to find them thickets that's kind of out of the wind, and get into some of them thicker areas in between the fields. And that's what I've found useful. And I run cameras in a lot of them places. Even in pinch points coming out of a pasture, I have one camera on this year. And I've had some good luck, nothing big. Just I see movement through there, a little bit of everything. And that's just them little funnels, deep pockets, for my terrain, that's what I'm looking for. And for yours is just probably a little different,
Yeah. So, you basically boiled it down to 2 bedding scenarios. Mm-hmm. They're either in the standing corn or they're in those cutouts. Yeah. And those cutouts don't change year-round. Obviously, they're terrain feature. Vegetation on them maybe changes a little, but they're still going to be in there to some degree, either behind dry bushes or green bushes. Here, obviously, you've got the corn to contend with. So if the corn's still standing, you've got that prime bedding to contend with. Another big time bedding is going to be tall grasses. And that's another thing that's you got to recognize with this time of year is those tall grasses start to lay over. They start to die off. And it's no longer this nice, luscious, secure, 4 foot tall bedding opportunity. It's now pretty exposed. And it's really loud when they're getting in and out of there when it's dried out. So they're going to transition out of that bedding, which is really biting me at this point because I had pretty pinned down on the bedding on the property I'm been working on for the last month or so that you've been able to see the videos. And now that tall grass is laying down and those bedding areas are dying, and the corn's still up, they're definitely all in the corn now, and the corn happens to be off of the property and it's just waiting for that corn to come down. But you just got to start thinking about where else they could be bedding that seems somewhat safe. If the grass goes down and the corn's down, now where are they going to go? You got to be thinking about those things. They don't just, you go to your same bed in your same room every night. This is totally different. They're maybe going for a while to the same similar area, but it's going to change. And it seems like around here, once the tall grasses are down and corn's out, they're going into the thick. They're going like the bucks are going into the thick timber, especially on the public ground. They're going into the thick stuff. If you come across the buck bed on the public ground around here, I think that earlier this year when Joanna and I were out scouting a property, I walked around in a buck bed we found, and I don't think he was actively using that bed. I think that was his hunting season bed essentially, but it was thick and there was like 3 or 4 ways in or out of there, but it was so thick I could have sworn I was going to find his sheds in there. And he had rubbed up every tree basically on the 3 or 4 ways in or out of there. But if you were getting anywhere close to that bed, he's going to hear you from a mile away because it was just so thick, which makes it even more difficult as long as they've got their wits about them. So I guess the next step then would be the last thing I wanted to cover with this conversation. First of all, the guys that are on, anybody that jumps on, feel free to leave comments or questions or some of your experiences as well. It's going to help add to the conversation here instead of just the two of us. Love to put in what you guys are saying. But the last part would be, what would you recommend, Jake, as far as, if you were trying to reduce or prevent the October-Lull where you're hunting on your pieces, whatever it is, what are some things that you would do or try to put into place? Let's say that you own property. What would you be doing differently to try to make October a more successful month for you?
Well, honestly, I'd switch to the tactics. You're running cameras all year round, but I switched to the tactics like you kind of did, get the cellular cam, even just that little bit, not going into the woods as much to check them cameras. You're all excited, you might want to get in there and get them cameras checked every week, 2 weeks. And even those every 2 weeks, you're still putting your scent down, putting that, that the one place you want them deer to come or you want them deer to be, they're not going to be there because you've been in there jacking around or whatever you're doing, checking cameras. I don't have any cellular cameras. I try to check them as I go to the stand or while I'm in the stand or something along those lines. I don't make a special point during hunting season to go in and get them cameras just because I don't like them pressure down like that. And I've always done that. It's just my kind of theory on that. I mean, other people want to get in there and check them, but like I said, the cellular cams, staying away, I see people driving by their hunting properties all the time, just checking to see what deer are out in the field. That's even putting pressure on them, you see your pickup rolling up and they run off into the trees. my loud pickup, I feel like they get they get used to knowing me. They hear me coming from miles away, so they just leave. But I would just stay out of the area. I mean, if you're wanting good luck, and even if you sent down, you're still you're still getting sent in there. I mean, there's no way around it. But I would link cams. I mean, I've been wanting to switch to those out here. I don't know provider wise if we can carry something like that, but the Tacticam, that new Tacticam reveal cam, I've heard pretty affordable for people, and it's kind of I know an outfitter here nearby town that's running those, 100 and some of them, and he's having good luck with them. So I thought maybe trying one or two if he can get signal, I can. But like I said, just stay out of the trees, and that'll definitely limit your pressure.
Yeah, I think I mentioned to you before, I've actually considered going away from cameras altogether. I feel, like a good example, what you were saying with your scent, we both established mineral sites, right, on these properties that we've hunted. And we continue to supplement those same mineral sites because the deer know those mineral sites. A good example is your trail camera video. You showed your using that rock, and the deer know it's going to be there. That means that they also are going to recognize when your cameras are, when your scent's there, that you brought it. All the same, just okay. The rock's here, the supplement, the nutrients here, or whatever. Even if you do it all year long, you eventually start going in there and putting a camera in or checking it, and now now he's here. Just the same. Yep. Okay, now we'll just come at night. But I've thought about now that. So my thought was the trail cameras are great for you try to figure out. Let's say back in the day, you're trying to figure out where deer pattern, etc. And then you because you're going to put a tree stand in there, and you want to you don't want to go through all that effort of putting in this giant hang-on ladder stand in that you're not going to be able to move around if there's no deer activity out there. Now it's different, especially for me. I'm pure run and gun. I have everything on me every day. There's nothing ever left in the trees. So that doesn't really apply to me anymore. Maybe I should just be going in early and looking for sign, and the first good sign I see, I just set up on it and see what happens. Give yourself a shot that way, keeping pressure off the land, keeping your scent out of there as much as possible. Versus, I feel like the only reason I do trail cameras for the most part is for pictures. The way I've been doing it now is now that I'm in this Big Red Outdoors lease club, and I still put cameras out on public property and a different private lease, I put out 2 or 3 traditional trail cameras and then 1 cell camera per property. And the cell camera per property is set up either over a mineral site or a mock scrape, hemp rope, something that I'm hoping that every buck on the property is going to hit those type of things. Yeah. And so that cell camera there is purely for let's see what's in there. And then I try not to check those other trail cameras. I'll maybe pull them at the end of the year and use this year's data to try to feed how you handle it next year, instead of trying to take all those cameras and change what I'm doing in the moment and scrambling around all over the place and just stinking up the joint.
Yeah.
But being able to be mobile, that's a big part of it. Obviously, you guys see that I hunt out of a saddle. I think you'll see these guys transition that way. Just the style hunting we do and the property access we have. We don't own whitetail farms, so we're not putting up big old muddy bull blinds and whatnot, and living in too much luxury. But I love it. I love that we can go and hunt out of any tree, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, that'll be a change for me.
Yeah, that brings it basically full circle back to Jake saying it's all about being able to be mobile, whatever mobile looks like for you. Jake has just a lot of stands up, right, in different places.
Yeah.
So you can bounce around to different parts of the property because you've already got stands in there and you just got a lot of stands out. I used to, last year I did the backpack, the X-Country or X-Stand backcountry pack with the 4 sticks, and it was decent. I mean, it was my first time really being able to be mobile. Prior to that, I had to do that public land, working cameras all summer and trying to get a feel for where I should put a stand in, because once that stand's in, I'm committed.
Yeah.
So the backpack stand really helped me to be a little bit more mobile. It was difficult to get gear around, and it was heavy. And now it's just a whole new level with the saddle and wearing it on your waist, and being able to really run and gun, and being able to even get up in a tree, realize you're wrong in the first hour or so, and get down and move.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
So, I mean, we're at the hour mark. We said we try to keep these at an hour. Those that have been on, that left comments, we thank you guys. Those that are watching on the pod or listening on the podcast later, we also thank you. The best thing you can do to try to help us is, 1, give feedback on how we can do better, and 2, like, subscribe, share, give us ratings on iTunes, those kind of things. That's going to help us to continue to grow and honestly cost you nothing. If you have bad things to say, I'd appreciate it if you just let us know in person so that we can try to improve on what we're doing, and keep bringing you the content. We really love doing this stuff. And any parting words from you, Jake, on the content?
No, like I said, I went hunting that one time last weekend, last Sunday. Plan to hunt this next following Sunday. I won't be able to hunt on Saturday, just the way things go. But Sunday, hopefully put the 2 hunts together. I'm trying to get anything on camera, so I might shoot a doe if I can, just for practice, and something along those lines for you guys. But yeah, I'll try to get the 2 together and maybe put something out, or unless it's a slow hunt for the October-Lull or something. But we'll hopefully get them out here, and you'll be producing, and I know Ben produced, weekly. So just everybody stay tuned. And there I go again saying that, but keep updated, subscribe so you can get the notifications when we post things, and stay active on the comments. That would be awesome. We like that quite a bit. So
absolutely. Watch for this week. Like I said, tomorrow I'll be releasing Ben and Carly's hunt, which was Carly's first ever deer hunt and first trip in the tree stand, and I believe she's 6 or 7, so it's pretty cute, pretty cool little experience for her. And it's really cool, honestly. Watch it and just watch how Ben reacts to his daughter. He gives a lot of education on how to get your kids in the woods and how to help them like it. And in the moment, I'll give Ben the tip of the cap. In the moment, you can see Ben living out what he talks about. And I was really thrilled to be able to produce that video so that Carly will go back and watch it later and see actually how her dad reacted. It's just cool. And then later in the week, I will be, as far as our gear review for the week, I will be putting out a gear dump where I go over the Alps Pathfinder pack that Jake is using, and now Ben is using, the one that I had. And before I gave it to him, I went through and I dumped out so you could see, 1, the amount of gear that pack can hold, and 2, what kind of gear I'm actually using to do what I'm doing. And it's overkill. Just keep that in mind. I'm definitely an overkill person. So, but that'll be our gear review for the week, and I'll probably get a subscription box video out this week. So hopefully 3 videos coming out this week, and then we will be letting you know what next Sunday night we'll be bringing on the Fireside Chat. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, Jake.
Yep, see you guys.